So let's cultivate our motivation and spend a minute or so really reflecting on the kindness of other living beings, that everything we know, everything we have, everything we're able to do, all exists in relationship to the efforts of others. Even our ability to practice the Dharma depends on the efforts of sentient beings. So ponder that and really let your heart feel a sense of gratitude and appreciation for everything that others have done for you. And then, dependent on that feeling of gratitude and appreciation, have a wish to repay that kindness, to give to sentient beings. There's many ways to repay kindness, to give to sentient beings. We can help them temporally, which is important, but even more important is if we can help them spiritually so that they can abandon the causes of suffering and create the causes for happiness. In order to do that, we need to do that ourselves first. And so therefore we generate the Bodhicitta intention for full awakening. So it's really, I think, rather humbling when we spend time thinking about the kindness of others and how everything has depended on the efforts of others. I remember Lama Zopa talking about this, and sometimes he, in previous years, he would go up to Lauda, where his previous life meditated, and the local people there, of course, have much reverence for the lamas, and basically in Lauda, what you eat is potatoes. I was up there for some time, and you eat basically potatoes and tea. And Rinpoche told us the story just of how people would bring him potatoes, once in a while tsampa from Tibet, but mostly potatoes, and how it was so difficult for him to accept the potatoes when he thought of how kind these people have been to him, not only in this life, but in previous lives. He said he felt like it was, how could he accept a gift from them that when he hasn't paid it back or done something in return? Yeah. And I was very touched by that, because it's only potatoes, something that we take for granted, and how, especially in West and in the wealthy societies, how we take everything we have for granted. Yeah, we just assume, yes, there's going to be an education system and we deserve an education. Yes, there's should be health care and we deserve it. Yes, there should be roads and we deserve them. Yes, there should be electricity and we deserve it. But when we really start looking around, it's like, wow, we're just the beneficiaries of a tremendous amount of kindness. And a lot of that coming from people that we don't even know. Yeah. Like, who built this building? Well, some of us know who hauled the building up. This building used to be down the hill. Who hauled it up? Some people here were involved with putting the building back together again after it had been hauled up. Yeah. But and some of us were involved with, because this was initially a garage, so the ceiling wasn't like this. It was lower, and there were the garage door things here. There was a big kerosene tank over in this corner. Yeah. And so some of us were involved in making it what it was. But the original building, the garage, some of us knew Harold and Vicky, the previous owners, but, who actually built this? Harold was old at that time. I don't think he built it. Yeah. The logs came from the land here. And who got them down and hauled them in? Yeah, so everywhere we look, do you just take one building that we seem to benefit from? Yeah, it's snowing outside. We're benefiting a lot from this building, aren't we? Yeah, and the fact that it's warm. So often we don't think about that and the interrelationship with other people, and the things on the altar, the books, who printed the Kangyur and Tengyur. Yeah. And everything here, there's a story behind The Buddha was offered to us by a nun in Houston in 1998, 5 years before we purchased the property. Yeah. And the Maitreya and Manjushri Tankas were offered to us by the folks at Sravasti Abbey, Shasta Abbey, because somebody had given them to them, and it wasn't in their lineage, so they offered to us. Okay, the story behind how we got the texts is really interesting. I was living in Seattle at that time, and we had 2 friends, Bradley and Julia, and they had ordered a set of the Kangyur and Tengyur, but they didn't realize how many texts were involved. They thought maybe it was just, 5 or 6 texts. And so when this arrived at the port, they didn't know what to do with all the texts, and they didn't know how to pay for the whole thing. Yeah. And so, they called us, and, that's how we got the texts. Okay. We went down and picked them up at the port. And, they were stored for, no, actually, that was how we got the other texts that were at DFF that are in Venerable Chuni's office. This set of texts was actually, we ordered, and it was stored at Deer Park. Yeah. The Buddha was at Deer Park. So maybe, no, but she offered it. It was the woman in Houston who offered it, but it was sent to Deer Park because we had no place to store it out here. And I think the texts were also sent there too. Yeah, because at one time we thought of actually starting the Abbey near Deer Park, but that didn't work out. So everything has a story. And do you remember how we got the Tankas? I know that the one with the 17 arhats is from Venerable Jendi. Gache, the medicine Buddha, Venerable Gache. And then you think of the people who painted all of these too. Yeah. Anybody remember where the other one? Which one? The Chenrezi? Yeah. The Tara?
Yeah.
Venerable Pema offered it, huh? Okay.
I think some of the winter retreats,
Yes. Right. Yeah, they got together and they offered that. And then the 35 Buddhas.
I know that she offered 2.
Okay, so that might have been the other one, yeah. But our point is here that, look how much we benefit from not only the people who've offered us things, but the people who spent hours and hours and hours making them. Yeah. And thus we have the opportunity to sit in this room and be inspired by looking at everything. Yeah. This was offered by ABC, the stupa there. Vajrasattva, I can't remember. This was offered by Sirkam Rinpoche, the Lama Tsongkhapa, and the Dharma Wheel by Pari Rinpoche, and the Amitabha, again by Singaporeans. Yeah. The Arhats, we ordered from Annie Fran at Copan, arranged it, and then sent them here. So, the point is everything that we have around us came from others. And even the fact that we can talk about it, depends on the kindness of others, because other people taught us how to talk. Yeah. And people made our clothes. And people wove the fabric and put down the carpet and that's just, if you look back for take any possession you have and think back about the causes for it and who was involved in that and the people involved in that and the people involved in that, it just becomes enormous how much we've benefited from the labors of other living beings and how little we are aware of it. Yeah? But when you become aware of it, it's really kind of overwhelming. Yeah? And this immense feeling of gratitude comes for living beings. Because otherwise, no way we could practice the Dharma. No way we could get out of samsara. Okay? So really thinking about that is key to generating bodhicitta. And so also thinking about your school teachers. Yeah? People, we're about to read the book. Who taught us how to read? And what did they put up with in order to teach us how to read? What did we do in class while they were trying to teach us? So, then we really begin to see how other living beings have come through for us. Okay, so I think we were at the top of 222. So Bodhisattva's compassion is so strong that if it were more beneficial for sentient beings, for bodhisattvas to stay in samsara, they would do that. Imagine that, we're struggling to see the faults of samsara. When you read the descriptions of the faults, you really see, and then you think bodhisattvas are willing to stay in samsara for the benefit of sentient beings. And when we say stay in samsara, it means that they take birth in our world. It doesn't mean that they don't try and get themselves out of samsara. They do, because if they stayed with afflictions, their ability to benefit others would be limited. However, since they can benefit sentient beings more after eliminating their defilements, bodhisattvas practice diligently. Upon eliminating all afflictive obscurations, bodhisattvas do not abide in nirvana, but have a mental body and emanate various forms that benefit samsaric beings and accumulate merit. They continue practicing until they eradicate all obscurations and attain full awakening. So let me just add a little footnote here about mental bodies, because it's something that Geshe-la and I were discussing a few days ago. So Lama Tsongkhapa and Khedrubje say that beginning with the path of seeing with the first bhumi, that bodhisattvas gain a mental body, definitely. Okay. Gyaltsabje has a different opinion, and he says that at the first bhumi, if bodhisattvas exert effort, a lot of effort, they can have a mental body. Otherwise, they will get one when they attain the eighth ground, the eighth bhumi. So I remember in a previous class we were discussing that. So now we have the answer. So it's a very good, interesting thing, because we have Gyaltsabje and Khedrubje are Tsongkhapa's two principal disciples, and they don't always have the same view on everything. Yeah. They have different views from time to time. So this is one of them. Okay, so Santarakshita, in his Majjhimaka Alamkara, explains the sequence of meditation for two types of bodhisattva aspirants. Those with modest faculties initially generate renunciation, meaning the determination to be free, followed by compassion for all sentient beings. Okay. They admire bodhicitta due to having strong confidence in those who teach bodhicitta, and their aspiration to attain awakening derives from their ardent faith in the three jewels. They generate bodhicitta, practice the perfections, and then cultivate insight into emptiness. So that's how the modest faculty bodhisattva aspirant, or bodhisattva aspirants, the order in which they generate things. Okay? Bodhisattva aspirants with sharp faculties are not content to believe that awakening is possible because the three jewels and their spiritual mentors say so. They investigate to determine if ignorance can be eliminated. Seeing that the wisdom realizing emptiness can overcome it, they strive to gain at least a correct inference of emptiness, thus generating certainty that awakening is possible. On that basis, they generate bodhicitta, and with bodhicitta informed by the wisdom realizing emptiness, they then practice the other perfections. Okay, so we have a difference in order. The modest faculty people, they're practitioners based on faith. They have faith in the three jewels, faith in their teachers. The path is presented to them about how awakening is possible, and they have confidence in that. And so they develop renunciation and bodhicitta, and then they go on to realize emptiness. Sharp faculty people are not so much based on faith, but on reasoning. So they need to prove to themselves beforehand that it's actually possible to attain awakening before they're going to really jump in and do everything that's necessary. So they meditate on the correct view and gain at least a correct inference. And then with the confidence that arrives through reasoning that it's possible to attain bodhicitta and attain full awakening, then they generate bodhicitta and practice the perfections with that awareness of emptiness. Okay. So they always encourage us to try and be sharp faculty disciples. I wonder what we are. Okay. So cultivating compassion and wisdom in tandem is very beneficial. As our understanding of emptiness increases, so will our compassion for sentient beings who are under the influence of ignorance. Okay, and so how that works is as we understand emptiness and gain confidence that it's possible to remove ignorance and thus stop all of samsara's dukkha. Yeah. Then when we look at people who are in samsara and their horrible experiences, we realize that all of this can be overcome. And so then when bodhisattvas have an understanding of emptiness and see that samsara isn't a given, it doesn't have to be, then when they see all the sentient beings in samsara, like seeing the deer, living beings who are trapped in that kind of body. And, maybe they're attracted to hearing the teachings, but they're not going to understand much. And, and you see, you're surrounded by all of that kind of thing. And you see that it's possible to stop it. and that sentient beings are just so overwhelmed by their ignorance that they keep on creating more and more causes for misery and more and more causes for rebirth and samsara, then that's going to really inspire your compassion for them. Okay, so that's how that works. Meanwhile, compassion temporarily counteracts many of the coarser afflictions, facilitating meditation on emptiness. So compassion alone cannot bring liberation because it doesn't uproot the ignorance that grasps true existence, but it does counteract many of the coarser afflictions, for example, anger and resentment and so on. And by it doesn't uproot those afflictions, but it subdues them temporarily. And so by subduing the grosser afflictions, then it helps us have more mental space to learn about emptiness and to contemplate emptiness. So that's how compassion facilitates the meditation on emptiness. Two methods exist to train the mind in bodhicitta. The first is the sevenfold cause and effect instruction, and the second is equalizing and exchanging self and others. In both of these, the principal cause of bodhicitta is great compassion. This, in turn, depends on seeing others as pleasing and lovable and feeling the depth of their dukkha. Okay, so then now we start with equanimity. So equanimity, like we talked about the last couple of days, is the precursor to both of those methods for generating bodhicitta. To have unbiased love and compassion for all beings, we must first free our minds from coarse attachment to friends and relatives, apathy towards strangers, and hostility towards enemies. As mentioned above, cultivating equanimity is the way to do this. To develop equanimity, we reflect that our categorization of people as friends, enemies, and strangers is unstable and highly subjective. Okay, if someone is nice to us today, we consider her a friend and become attached. But if tomorrow she criticizes us, our fondness evaporates and she becomes an enemy. When we lose touch with a friend or an enemy, that person becomes a stranger. Meanwhile, today's strangers may become friends or enemies in the future if we meet an enemy in a different situation, he becomes a friend. There is nothing fixed in any of these categories. We have been each other's friends, enemies, and strangers countless times in beginningless samsara. Given this, there is no reason to be partial for or against any sentient being. Okay. Is that easy? Yeah, that's not easy, is it? Because we tend just so automatically to be partial. Yeah, the people who have been kind to us, the people we know better, often relatives, we feel this blood connection, which I've never really understood. Just because you have the same genes, why does that make you closer? Because that's just our body, and we aren't our body. Yeah, I find it very curious that, this thing about blood lineage is so important. Or maybe it's because, we live with the relatives so much, and they were the people who brought us up, and they were kind to us, and so we feel more familiarity with them. Yeah, and more trust. Yeah, so maybe that's one reason why the family is so important. And, for ordinary people in society, the family is very important, and that kind of bonding that goes on between a family is important for raising children and having a stable society. But if you're looking for liberation, then you have to go completely beyond that, because that kind of attachment just keeps us in samsara again and again.
Those are all super valid, the trust of being around somebody constantly. But I also think that this whole blood relation being like the closest possible connection is a lot to do with people who think that mind is an emergent factor of the brain. And along with that notion, I think people believe that like children are a blank slate because their mind.
Say that last sentence again.
So this is for people who don't think that mind is separate from body. They think that mind is emergent from the brain's processes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And also that their child is a blank slate and everything their child is because of them. And that kind of delusion kind of fosters a stronger connection between genetics.
Yeah, my child is a replica of me that's going to do everything and be everything I haven't been able to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. But then it's also true that when babies are switched at birth and they're brought up by a different set of parents, that the bonding is just as strong, because that same thing is projected on the baby, even though that baby is not a blood relation. Yeah, quite interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you really look, on how the world functions, and this thing of, having children. Children are your legacy in the world, what you leave behind. Yeah. So it's kind of like there's an awareness of death, and so to perpetuate yourself, you leave children behind. So when you really look at it, if you think, this is just our body and we are not our body, then there's nothing so special about kids or parents or whatever. If you think about the kindness that family has shown us, that's important for our spiritual practice to recognize. But again, to not respond with attachment for that, but to use the fact of the family's kindness to see everybody has been that kind to us in one rebirth or another, and therefore wanting to repay it through sharing the Dharma with them. Okay, so rather than having kindness and then, getting attached and putting all our eggs in a few baskets. So this is not an easy thing to do, and it's very much against what society teaches us, which is why practicing the Dharma is often referred to as swimming against the current, and why monastics are referred to as white crows. Yeah. How often do you see a white crow? Yeah. Okay, so, really learning to think and to regard living beings in a very different way, and opening our heart to everybody, backed by the reason that if it isn't just in this life that they've been kind, in many previous lives they've been kind to us, and in future lives they'll be kind to us. And if we look at the big picture of beginningless time, we're not going to be able to find a few people who have been kinder to us than others, because we've all been kind to each other in beginning of the samsaric life. But that's getting on to the next step. But just here, even in this life, this meditation with equanimity is more dealing with, it has the idea of rebirth in it. Just the changing nature of relationships. Yeah, and if you look in your own life, you know, how many of us are still best friends with our best friends in first grade? Yeah, or second grade or third grade, you know? I mean, all these people who are our best friends now, at least in my case, I don't know any of them. Yeah. And, you know, so somebody I was attached to becoming a stranger. We can see in our lives somebody who was a friend becomes an enemy. Yeah, that's what divorce is all about. You know, you're madly in love with somebody one year and then they're your hated enemy the next. Sorry to say, but this is what happens. Yeah. And just how unpredictable those relationships are, and how, if we really look very closely, how subjective they are. You know, because we look and we think, oh, a friend, this person is a wonderful person from their own side. And the enemy is an awful person from their own side. And the stranger is, you know, a neutral person, again, from their own side. You know, so the friend is worthy of attachment, the enemy worthy of aversion, the stranger worthy of apathy. You know, as if these relationships existed out there, that's who those people were. But if we really examine, and maybe somebody can lead the meditation that I often do for equanimity. Somebody remember that? So where I have people visualize somebody they're attached to and then say, why am I attached to that person? And same with the enemy, why I have aversion, the stranger, why do I? Yeah. And to do that, and to really do some research about why we have those emotional reactions to those three groups of people, and then to see where those emotional reactions come from. What are they rooted in? Yeah, they're rooted in me and how somebody relates to me. So I think they're an objectively good person simply because they're nice to me. Yeah. If they were nice to somebody I didn't like, even they had that same quality of being kind and considerate, because they showed that quality not to me, but to somebody I didn't like, then I put them in the enemy camp with the people I don't like. So it's not on the basis of traits so much, but on who they show those traits towards. Yeah? And so if somebody shows their good qualities towards me, I think they inherently are a wonderful person. And if somebody shows their bad qualities towards me, I think they are inherently a jerk. Yeah, but actually they aren't inherently any of those. It's simply my own bias, prejudice, self-centered mind that divides people into groups based on the center of the universe, who happens to be me. Yeah? And so people who like the people I consider enemies, they're just, ignorant fools. And this is what's happening in the country right now, Yeah, the Republicans look at other people, those people are ignorant fools. And the progressives look at the Trump backers and roll their eyes, because we think that, we discriminate who people are based on a few superficial qualities, and whether, how those qualities relate to us. Yeah, so somebody who doesn't agree with my political opinions, first of all, I don't have political opinions. I have truth. Okay, that's how it starts out with. I have truth, not opinions. Other people have opinions. Their opinions are different from my truth. So they must be idiots, you know? And this is what goes on with conflict between religions as well, you know, all the different ways, nationalities, ethnic groups, all the different ways that we create to divide ourselves from other people. It's all based on, you know, whatever is mine is right and the best, and whatever, you know, feeds me is good, but whatever is different from me is scary, yeah, and it must be bad. Yeah. And then we believe all this rubbish instead of really seeing the unifying factors that all living beings share, which is we're all stuck here in samsara together. Yeah. And better that we help each other rather than harm each other. Okay. So this equanimity meditation, not easy, but very, very important. Yeah. And the more we can develop that equanimity, the better we're going to get along with other people. Because we won't have so many opinions and judgments about them. Yeah. Now, abandoning opinions and judgments doesn't mean you say everybody's exactly the same, even on you know, a relative level. Okay, so having equanimity doesn't mean that you act towards everybody in the same way. You act differently towards a 2-year-old than you do with an adult. Yeah, even though sometimes adults act like 2-year-olds, okay? But we act differently. So this is talked about in reference to how we feel and how close or distant we feel to others. So cultivating a heart that values and is equally open to everybody, even though we have to relate to them different, sometimes according to social roles or according to age and capacity and so on. Okay? But the equanimity is in terms of caring for everybody equally. Okay, is this clear? Yeah? Okay, yeah. Because otherwise, people sometimes think, well, you know, I've got to treat everybody equally. Yeah. So you give your two-year-old matches, yeah, that you know, or you treat an adult like a 2-year-old, and that kind of stuff doesn't work, yeah. Okay. So having equal, open-hearted care for others does not. So that's what we want to develop through equanimity: equal, open-hearted care for others does not mean we treat or trust everyone equally. Conventional roles and relationships still exist. We trust old friends more than strangers, even though we want both equally to be happy and free from suffering. While maintaining equanimity internally, we can still prevent someone from harming us. Okay? So there's still the conventional way of relationships, but yeah, but we eliminate the attachment and anger. Okay. Now we're getting into the sevenfold cause and effect. Are there any questions just about that, what we've done so far? So I think very important to meditate on equanimity a lot.
I see one of the problems in this, well, maybe it's a matter of like layers. It starts with seeing the reaction might be friend, enemy, stranger, but with like an enemy or difficult person, I find that the trust problem is with myself. I don't trust myself to be able to kind of deal with the behaviors or whatever, in a way that I would want to.
Yeah.
So that's, for me, the thing that I find, like, when I'm seen as cold, that's usually what's going on inside, is I just can't figure out how to manage myself even. So part of anger is not just directed out. I think in this, what goes on for me with the friend, enemy, stranger thing.
Yeah. That's very interesting, how we often project it outward as that person is unpredictable. That person is, whatever, out of control. But actually what's happening is we feel a lot of discomfort inside because we don't know actually how to relate to that person. Yeah. And so what makes us have aversion towards them is actually our own personal discomfort with them. Yeah, because if we, had more confidence and more skill in relating to different kinds of people, then we wouldn't be so afraid of them. So I think that is one of the qualities of people, the holy beings who can relate to a huge variety of people, is that they have that confidence in being able to relate to everybody in a useful way, And I was thinking here about Marshall Rosenberg and nonviolent communication, and how he would go in and mediate between different warring factors. Yeah, and he would also talk to people who criticized his own ethnic group and who disagreed with him politically. And he was able to do all of that because he had the confidence that he could communicate with all of them, because he was looking beyond the superficial appearances and opinions into, like, what's going on in that person as a living being who wants happiness and not misery. And that's why, His Holiness says, he always says, wherever I go, I see everybody as friends. Yeah, because that's the way he regards everybody, So he puts out friendship, and then, he winds up talking to these all different sorts of people, and that really builds bridges. Yeah, you could see him especially at interfaith things. When he's with the Hindu swamis, he'll put the red marks and all the things here, and with the Jains he'll do what they do. When he went to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, he put on a yarmulke. That just blew everybody away. Yeah. So, kind of completely fine with all of this. Yeah. Okay, so the sevenfold cause and effect instruction. Founded on the practice of equanimity, the first three causes help us to cultivate love and compassion. These are: 1, recognizing all sentient beings have been our parents in previous lives. 2, contemplating their kindness when they were our parents. And 3, wishing to repay their kindness. These 3 bring forth the fourth of the 7, deep affection and heartwarming love for all beings, which leads to 5, compassion. And then we'll go from there. So compassion has 2 principal aspects: a sense of closeness to others and concern for their suffering. So I don't think I went into, we didn't go into much detail, just listed those three here because didn't want to make the book too long. Maybe I should just explore these a little bit more. So based on equanimity, then recognizing that sentient beings have all been our parents. And so this involves having an understanding of rebirth and seeing, that we've all been born as many different things and so have all sorts of other living beings. And so we have this basic relationships as of parent and children with other living beings. And then to think that those other living beings, when they were our parents, they were very kind to us, just like our present parents were kind to us. And then we contemplate the kindness of our present parents. I think in traditional Asian societies, children were brought up to respect their parents and to see the kindness of their parents, and you were brought up that way. People, even if you had a different opinion, you weren't allowed to yell and scream at your parents and call them names and throw a temper tantrum. And I know I'm not Asian, but in my house, you were never allowed to do that towards your parents. And I think that in America, some people say, well, it could be good, let the children have all their emotions and express their emotions outwardly to the parents. But on the other hand, then sometimes it just, the kids don't learn what is suitable to say and what's not suitable to say. And they sometimes just act. Put it this way, when you go into an American school abroad, it's very different from the local schools in that country and very different from the Canadian schools in that country or the European schools in that country. American schools, the kids are they're all over the place, and I've been invited as guest speakers, and you're trying to walk on the corridor, and the kids are sitting there with their legs stretched out in the middle of the corridor, talking to each other. Somebody, you're trying to walk. They never think to pull their legs in so that you don't trip over them. They're talking loud. They never think that, maybe other people want a little bit of quiet. Somehow American kids are really all over the place. You taught abroad, didn't you? Yeah. What's your observation?
Well, I taught it in Greek schools for a while, and there, when the teacher walked into class, everybody stood.
Yeah.
They did say a prayer for you as you walked in, but they did stand. But a lot of American teachers would teach them to sit, not stand in their classroom, feeling that was undemocratic. So there was a kind of strange thing, and I began to really respect the fact that the kids would stand and be ready then to start learning. But I also taught in international schools, and where the population was mixed, probably generally 70% American and 30% a mixture of other things. But there it was basically kids who were raised in upper middle class families, whose parents were educated, and they're a very different household than you get just in a regular public school. And I've also taught in the public schools and felt very guilty for leaving the public schools to go into a much easier place to teach. I wasn't very bodhisattvish in that respect.
Yeah.
But yes, and it's gotten worse because, I mean, I can't believe with the whole helicopter family type thing, and people, I hear stories of parents calling the bosses of their children to complain about the bosses teaching them. And I mean, the extremity of that has reached incredible proportions.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's this whole thing, because what I'm getting at in this discussion is that many people in the West find the meditation on the kindness of the parents difficult because they say, my parents didn't do this, they didn't do that, they did these harmful things, and da 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 da. And in some case, abuse in the household is very genuine and very harmful. And at other times, it's like, I think ever since Freud, we have learned to criticize our parents and blame our problems on our parents and on our upbringings. So I'm not poo-pooing what happens in families. Sometimes it's very difficult. Yeah. But I'm saying our attitude towards the family contributes to the difficulty that we experience. And if we are used to having a very negative attitude towards our parents, then then I think it's harder when people become parents themselves to be confident about being parents to their own kids, because they have such a negative feeling towards their own parents. And I think also, I know in my case, as a young adult, just one complaint after another, as a teenager and young adult, I complained incessantly about my parents. And it wasn't until I met the Dharma and I started doing this meditation on the kindness of the parents that I really opened my eyes and saw what a skewed view I had of my family. Yeah, and that there was actually a lot of kindness there that I couldn't see because of my own self-centeredness. Yeah, and so I know for me personally that while this meditation was difficult initially, it was very, very important for me to be able to break through that and see the kindness that there was in my family, instead of always having one complaint after the other. Okay? So what they usually say is, if you've had a difficult relationship with your family, then meditate on the kindness of whoever brought you up. So it could be a grandparent, an aunt or uncle. It could have been somebody who was not a blood relation. But the point is that some people looked after us when we were young, because if nobody did, we wouldn't be alive. That's the bottom line, okay? So we can't, this meditation, is saying, look, we've got to see the kindness of others no matter what we experienced. I mean, you think of the kids in Syria who grew up in a war zone with bombs dropping and then, having to become refugees in other countries, and then a big thing of ice fell. Yeah, the bombs dropping. And I mean, look how much that happens and everybody goes like this. Imagine if we were being bombed, how you would feel. And becoming refugees in other countries and everything they go through. Yeah. But still in that situation, people are kind to them. Otherwise, those kids wouldn't be alive. Yeah, and I think it's very important for us on a psychological level and on a spiritual level to be able to see that kindness. So even though our childhood may not have been the perfect childhood, because I don't think anybody's childhood is a perfect childhood, because we're in samsara, to be able to see the kindness that was there and not hold on and exaggerate the negative things that went on. Yeah. Simply because, when we pay a lot of attention to the negative things, then they just grow in our mind and create a lot of hindrance. Yeah, when we emphasize the positive things, that appreciation grows in our mind. So it's not saying to ignore the harmful things that happened in the family. Yeah, we acknowledge them, but we don't make that our identity, and we don't think that's the only thing that happened in the relationship with our parents. Yeah.
Well, I agree with this for the vast majority of that. I know a couple people, one in particular, who really seems to have survived without the kindness of others, and they were raised in a very horrible situation and then grew up really just stealing everything they could possibly steal to survive and constantly being met with unkindness. And I wouldn't even call this person a friend because they don't know how to accept any amount of friendship because it's so foreign to them.
Mm-hmm.
How would that person facilitate such a meditation?
Yeah. Okay. So I think I'm talking about the ideal situation. Yeah. Because somebody who has very hardened concepts like that, they're not going to be able to do this meditation right away. Okay. But to really see that they are alive because somebody did take care of them. Because when we were born as infants, there was no possible way we could take care of ourselves. No possible way. We couldn't feed ourselves. We couldn't put on a blanket when we were cold. We couldn't go to the doctor and get medicine when we were sick. We couldn't do anything as infants. We were totally helpless. Yeah. And so if that person could see that there were some people who did care for them at that time, if they could let that into their heart, they may have difficulty letting it into their heart because, like you said, that was so foreign in their whole upbringing. But if they could, I think it would help them a great deal.
I know for a fact from having talked to this person that they see the very fact that their mother continued to take care of them, they see that as an unkindness in comparison to if they had been given up for foster care. Mm-hmm. They view that of having been the only kind thing because they were raised in a tent in pure homelessness.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can see it that way and say, my parents should have given me up and put me in foster care. Or you can see it as, wow, my parents were in really dire straits and they did the best they could, and they didn't want to give their children in a foster care, even though they couldn't care for them very well. So you could look at the same situation in two different ways. Yeah. And they did the best they could. All they had was a tent. They had minimal food, but they wanted to keep the family together. And so it's interesting because lots of times people who are given up for foster care because their parents couldn't take care of them, then resent the parents for doing that. And here you have somebody who stayed with the family but resents it for not, being put in foster care. So it shows that it just depends how we look at the situation. Yeah. How it appears to us was how we look at it.
I just want to comment, being familiar with foster care, that in some instances
it's not great.
It's likely to, not be very supportive. And some kids do get abused in foster care as well, both physically and emotionally and sexually. So it does happen.
Yeah. So it's very much the mind that sees the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. Yeah. And I think accepting our parents' limitations is very important. I know for me it was. It's just like these people are trying to do their best with the skills they have, with the resources they have, and they are conditioned by the environment they grew up in. And so, of course, they have limitations. But, within all of that, they're doing the best that they can. Even if there's abuse in the house, they're doing the best that they can. Yeah. That doesn't mean the abuse is good. It doesn't mean it's acceptable. Quite the opposite. But it frees us from holding rancor towards others. That's the whole point, to free our heart from holding rancor. Because when we hold that rancor inside, who's the one who suffers? Who's the one who is impeded?
Yeah, I was just going to say pretty much that same thing, and that until we make some peace with what we got, whatever it was, we really don't progress. Certainly not in general life, but particularly not in our Dharma practice, because we keep that burden, that veil around us, and we are totally identified by what somebody else did, and so we can't come into our own as who we are.
Yeah. So it's difficult to heal from that, but we can. Yeah. And we've got to if we want to be happy. Yeah. So it's another one of those situations. There's two choices. We could hold on with anger and rancor towards what other people did, or we could see the kindness and beauty in life. Our choice.
Well, you talked about it. For me, what helps me a lot about the relation with my parents is that looking at my own limitation, am I better? No. I don't have kids, but I look my daily life where I struggles and all of that. Same for them. And same for their parents, and before and before and before.
Yeah.
We've been here for eons, and look still what we're doing. So that helps me a lot to let go of that.
Yeah.
They did the best they knew about. That's all.
Yeah.
If they would have been able to do something else, they would have done.
What I learned, especially in the past months, is that I see that as if I haven't repaid the kindness. I have received harm from outside because I haven't given back what I have received in previous lives. So I see that very strongly, that until I, in different ways, repay that kindness that I must have received at one point, I will not make peace with these people or persons. So I think that's very important, to repay everybody's kindness.
Yeah. Yeah. And to do that, we have to see the kindness. Yeah. Okay. So we contemplate their kindness when they were our parents. And then they say that and then remember that they've all been our parents, So the guy who painted, the contractor, yeah, the guy who fixed the tractor, all these different people, the people who want to build a smelter, they've all been our parents in previous lives. They've all been kind to us. Yeah, they did the best when they were our parents. They're doing their best now. Yeah. And so to allow ourselves to accept them for what they are and see the kindness that they have expressed. Because I went to, and many of you have heard this story, but this is a long time ago. There was a conference in Seattle about, the inner child. And so I was asked to speak at this inner child conference. But I wasn't a main presenter. I was in the breakout groups. So I went to the plenary sessions with the main presenters, and there was one man there. I don't know how much they paid him to give the plenary talk, but he was like pacing the stage with the microphone and talking about his wounded inner child, and gave the example of he grew up in San Francisco, and all the other boys' dads took them to see the San Francisco Giants, isn't it? Yeah, to see them play, and his dad always said he was going to take him to the ball game, and his dad every time had an excuse why he couldn't do it. So here's this grown man, he must be 40, 50 years old, pacing the floor, talking about the pain he had because his father didn't take him to the ball game when he was a kid. And I was there going, oh my goodness, this poor person, that this kind of thing caused him so much pain. And, in those days, there wasn't the civil war in Syria, so I was thinking maybe about Somalia instead, or India, what I had seen in India when I lived there. And I thought, wow, how much this person is suffering from something that is comparatively, so many kids in the world wouldn't even think of their fathers taking them to the ball game because there weren't any ball games to start with, or they didn't have any fathers in their homes. Yeah. And I just felt like, wow, this person is so unhappy, and he doesn't need to be. But this is our human predicament, that whatever we have, we find something insufficient in it. Isn't it? No matter what we have, it could be better.
I have a story about the kindness of the parents. Mm-hmm. For, I'd say, most of my life, I was angry at my grandmother for having abandoned my mother at an orphanage when she was very small. Not a baby, but also not a grown-up. She was, I would leave my mother with being in her early teens, maybe. Mm-hmm. She abandoned her there, and she took away with the two brothers, her two sons, and moved to a different country. Mm. And I try to wrap my brain as to why would my mother be abandoned in an orphanage, in a Catholic orphanage, and not ever gone back for her, not ever sent back for her. Not too many years ago, I found the answer. Mm-hmm. My grandmother was very, very poor, and she had to move to another country to see if she would find a better way of living. And she couldn't afford bus, she couldn't afford train tickets, she couldn't afford plane tickets, so she had to do this the old way, either walk or get somebody to give her rides or find a way to get there. And crossing the border was very dangerous for her, and she was afraid that my mother would be raped. And that's why she left it behind. And just knowing that changed my entire attitude, and I saw how kind of her to have helped my mother avoid this thing. And she never sent for her because she never had the money to send for her. Yeah. And so she died very poor. All her life she struggled. And so, whereas my mother had a chance for a better situation. So I could see the situation in an entirely different light.
Yeah. Very good example. Very good example. Yeah. And how often we don't understand the reasons our parents made the decisions they did. And we, or grandparents make the decision, and we, remain angry because we make up our own reasons why they must have done that. When your grandmother was really caring for her daughter very much.